Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. And actually, we're delighted to be broadcasting 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. We broadcast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central. And we've got a call-in line for you, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. There's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPREPARES.com. Doc Ram's with us, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning, Vincent.
Rick,
thank you for the laugh. I needed that.
You sound really serious today.
I needed that. I did. You just don't understand.
Hey, Rick.
It's been a long, hard week. And I don't know if others are being harassed with unsolicited recordings. But to get them at 11:30 at night and is kind of, from India. That's what they are. They're India. Makes me wonder if it isn't a harassment program where there's some kind of a bullpen. What do they call those things? Boiler room?
Yeah, boiler room.
People sit around and they're paid to purposefully call groups of people that are on certain lists just to harass them. This is Donald Trump. I'm here to save your day. I don't need that, and I don't need it at 11:30 at night, and I certainly don't need a bunch of creepy Indians calling me to tell me my computer's been hacked. How many people have gotten that? All raise your hands. You know what? The federal government and the law enforcement agencies can't do anything about it. I had one guy, actually, I'm keeping a list now. I filed a police report. It means nothing. And I was on a no-call list for long periods of time. The only way I can do it now is by labeling certain phone numbers, which, by the way, are discontinued, no longer in service numbers. How do they do that?
Yeah, what they do is they literally find companies who have gone out of, companies that have gone out of business. They get their telephone numbers, and then they program their outbound dialing system to use that number. So it looks like it's a legitimate number. It's a real company.
So basically, one guy, this one specific guy from India, keeps calling me. And that's why I don't believe it's from India. I believe it's a boiler room for harassment. They get paid to have a bunch of numbers. I'm just one of a number. It's not like I've been targeted specifically, but I'm on a list to be harassed. And they will call me at any set of hours. And sometimes it absolutely feels as if it's not even a human being doing it. It's, there's always a human being at the other end of the phone. But one of them, they called me 5 times. After I hang up, I hang up, then I wouldn't answer. They would continue to call 3 more times, even after I wouldn't answer. Now, you tell me how that works in a boiler room trying to make sales.
Well, let me tell you how.
This is harassment. This is not about, okay. Now, why would they do that? Well, profiling. And I have noticed how this has put an edge on everything I'm doing to the point where it's affecting my writing, it's affecting my personal life, and it's affecting my health. And I think it's done with intent. And I'm to the point where I may, I can't even do good radio with people like you because of the location that I am. I only have one single carrier available, CenturyLink, and they are like a party line where their bandwidth is so overwhelmed that I'm lucky to even get a decent signal out. Uploading, internet slow. Our dependency on communication, our dependency on entertainment, everything is all centered around this one set of technology that is manipulated. And now I'm getting the bigger picture. And I've been asked to write a new article on the gut and its relationship to health and instinct. And I'm here to tell you that the kinds of foods that we're being allowed to eat are types of weapons. And I am now, and I'm watching my personality change because of all of this. It's a tragedy. And if I'm being affected and I'm aware of it, what about America that is not aware?
Okay. I was talking with Norm Shuley about some of these things. I was talking with some of the other instructors about some of these things. And what I've noticed is America's becoming more on edge, more angry, more hyper, more short-fused. So I'm seeing what you're talking about, Rick. Let me address the issue about these calls. One of the things that happens in these robotic-type call systems, these computers, the numbers are entered into a database, and the database is used to make these outbound phone calls. And what they do is they'll dial 6 numbers at a time or so. Multiple number of calls are placed at the same time, and whoever answers first of those 6 calls. So let's say you have 10 agents. For each agent behind the computer screen with the headset on, 6 calls are made. And whoever answers that phone call first, that's the one who's connected to the agent. So a lot of times if you're sitting by the phone and you hear it ring and you pick it up after a half of a ring, you're probably going to be the first guy to get that agent. And he's going to try to, tell you something about your computer or whatever it may be. In our case, this morning, I'm hitting the caller ID button right now, and we got a call from a company called Point Break Cash. Point Break Cash. And it was one of those calls where they were so glad that we were here and they wanted to lend us money, that kind of a thing. We get all kinds of calls. And the thing that really bothers me the most is when we get calls where it says blocked, meaning we don't know who's calling, who they are, or unknown caller, because we don't like to answer those. So if we see that, we don't want to answer them. But sometimes they're bona fide calls. They're calls from our instructors who are on the air with us, and for some reason, that call is identified as blocked. So if I get a call
isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting?
Like if Freeze Dry Guy, if he calls me, it's blocked. Yeah. Miles, when Miles calls me, it's blocked. When Gwyneth Isaacs calls from Australia, it's blocked. So we have this dilemma. Do we answer the phone when it's blocked? Because many times we don't want to talk to that person because they're trying to sell us something or they are violating that.
How about using language that I'm not allowed to mention on this radio station when I say, would you please moment while I reconnect with the police? They want to monitor this call. And that guy from India will start to swear at me, calling me a mother, and, with the rest of the word on it. He will say things like that to me on the air. Now, you tell me what boiler room would allow that. So I don't believe it's a boiler room. I believe that there is a agency out there that is for hire to harass individuals. Anybody can go in and say, I want these 3 numbers harassed. And they'll pay for that service. And then these guys, they're from India, they have the accent and all of that, but they're not probably calling from India. And they're for hire.
It's interesting that you say that. I think you've got something there. And I also think, show me a police officer, show me someone in blue that doesn't use that kind of language that you're describing. If you read some of these posts on the internet, they say, get down, get down, get down, hands up, but it's laced with profanity. So I'm wondering if they get some guys who are thrown off the police force who are already trained to use that language.
Deal. I think that this kind of an agency seeks not so much salesmen as they do abusive behavior personalities that enjoy sadism.
Excellent point. And Rick, I mentioned several days ago.
I wonder why our government, local, regional, or national, would allow this with the FAA or FCC. So the FCC is no longer any more than FDA. I have issues. I'm right now reading an article on FDA it's under uncensored GE Food Venture, chronically dependent on deception, and this is by Stephen Drucker. Now, I am going to say something. Our government is no longer protecting us. It is abusing us. And there's a difference between trying to help and it becomes semi-abusive or done with intent. And I am now to the point where this is no longer the country I served and protected. And I am now beginning to realize that even when I was Ricky Rocket and trying to do the right thing out of grad school, working to do the right thing, that I was being misled even back then. In graduate school, I was making weapons as a project, as a graduate student making weapons for Vietnam. I remember making them.
Let's talk about that when we come back. Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us. DocRam.com. DocRam.com. Doc Ram's with us. And Rick, you were talking about when you were younger in graduate school and you were making weapons for the Vietnam conflict.
Okay, so here I am. I'm in my first year at Delaware, University of Delaware, Newark, Delaware, working at DuPont and Instrument Products Division and the Experimental Research Station. And I was in grad school doing solid-state physics under Dr. R.B. Murray. And Murray had invented a special solid-state device that took the visible light or infrared light and dropped it with a variable bandwidth down into visible light. And so here are 13 graduate students, there were 13 of us, that were making, each one doing identical device, making 13 of them, which were used in Vietnam for infrared to visible light flop downs. And we did that as a graduate school project for pay, making weapons at the university. And that was my first introduction to what I now am abhorrent on. During that period, the Vietnam War, this is in 1967. So that's just about when the Tet and all of that started to happen. And I remember how this all went down because I had a 2S deferment. I was in physics, and so I didn't have to go to Vietnam. My graduating class in 62 only half of my graduating class in men came back from that war. And that's why my graduating class we had 247 graduating, and I think over 50 of those individuals never came home. And I remember being best man in Don White's wedding, and a week later, they couldn't even find pieces of his body where the bomb had fallen. And I was best man at his wedding. And then 1 week later, they couldn't even find his body. I was there. I will speak adamantly about what I think about war. Like when I visited you and saw those buttons of your Nazi memorabilia where you had a Ford Motor Company with a swastika on it, there it is. The whole thing has, even back then, and with the best of intent, I was misused, and now I'm not going to forget it.
Rick, when you mentioned R.B. Murray, is that the same Murray that Murray Hill in central New Jersey, Bell Laboratories, the global headquarters? Yes,
that's R.B. Murray, yeah. He was my thesis professor and had a Nobel Prize in solid-state physics. Yes, sir. And I was there when we did it. And I'm finding that my past is coming back to me in memory. This morning I was remembering in the third grade, when I was captain of the patrol. And I would go out with my captain's badge, looking at my lieutenant, and going around making my rounds on the patrol, where we would set up crosswalks for kids coming to school. We got to go to Playland as a reward, free to Playland, and they'd open it up to us, and it was free, and I could do any ride I wanted for as long as I wanted, as a reward for that. I'm remembering things now in my memory of childhood, and I have to tell you, I'm reading something about timelines and how our memories seem to be changing. For example, did the automobile that JFK was shot in, was it a 6-seater or a 4-seater? And I'm back to remembering how I watched his wife looking directly at the driver and trying to get away from the driver, crawling off the back end of the car. Now,
that's exactly right.
That was a 4-seater. So why is there now memory of it being a 6-seater? That automobile was destroyed before he even went to the hospital. And I have to say, what's going on with timelines and our memories of things? It's interesting. I don't know what it means. I know that the past and future do not, in my studies of time, and the articles I'm writing on time travel right this moment, do not allow future or past. There is only the moment, and the dialogue that you have is in the closed encapsulation or cavitation ball that you have created as a unique soul.
Dr. Richard Alan Miller's with us. Rick, you mentioned the presidential limousine, and the limousine that John Fitzgerald Kennedy was in and John Connolly was in when they were both struck by bullets. I'm looking at this picture of the limousine, and it has a bench seat. It's actually 3 rows of seats. The first compartment is for the driver and someone sitting next to the driver with a bench seat. Could hold 2 comfortably on the bench seat, the driver and the person to his right, but you could squeeze 3 people in there because it's a bench seat, which was typical back in the 1960s. Then behind that, behind the wall, the privacy glass, maybe even bulletproof glass, there is, and I think it's slid up and down, there were 2 jump seats. So 2 people could sit directly behind the glass separating the driver from the passenger compartment. And then directly behind the 2 jump seats, which were folding seats, there's another bench seat which could hold 2 people, 3 if you squeeze them in. So I would say comfortably 4 people could sit in the passenger compartment of the limousine with a driver and someone else in the front seat as well. So you could put 6 people in there, but in the back, there's room really, I would say, for 4. So that's what I saw, Rick.
Isn't that interesting how each of us have a slightly different memory of that event?
And I would think that any person alive over the age of 5 years old knew exactly where he or she was at the time when we learned of the assassination.
I remember
of
that. Yeah,
John.
I was at the University of Washington, going from one classroom to the other, and I heard it over loudspeakers in the middle of the quad.
I learned about it in a school
and
classroom.
listening to it. I had no idea what it meant.
Well, I remember teachers crying. I remember shock. You know, I was in elementary school at the time. I remember teachers being very upset.
Oh, God, I'm not that old, am I? Oh, my goodness.
And, you know, Rick, that's there's absolutely no reason why this should be shrouded in mystery and conspiracy fact and conspiracy theory. We should know the truth. We should really know the truth. It's been a long time. And I remember them saying on the news that the actual accounts of what really happened will not be known for 75 years. That was at the time of the shooting. We learned that these documents would not be released to the public. It would not, the actual, what really happened would not be released to us until 75 years after the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, 22 November 1963.
How come we don't know what actually happened?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the question. And there's so many questions. And why is it? Why is it that our government is so afraid of us, what we might do, that they cannot tell the truth? And I was talking to one of our instructors last night. He called me, and he's also a broadcaster. And we were talking about this series of television shows that are getting closer and closer to the truth, documenting the scandals, the lies, the deception. It's an outrage. Who do these people think they are that they just can't tell us because they think we're going to panic or go nuts? It'd be nice if they started telling the truth all the time. All the time.
Well,
it would
what
be
we
refreshing.
need is Pinocchio for president, so that when they do lie, at least we have some indication.
I don't believe a single thing the government tells us. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Well, you
if
can
they say,
be assured as an individual that works in the woods and does brush permits and goes after mushrooms and things like that, that USDA and FDA and the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, and DNR, Department of Natural, they are all liars.
I was reading.
I have occasioned time after time over the last 20 years of catching them trying to make movements or policies that were against. I have one with FDA out of Portland, which determines what gets studied at different universities for drugs. That's the FDA primary is out of Portland, Oregon, when they make decisions. And I have been there when they decided not to study things like ibogaine because it was not native to the United States, and yet indications where it stopped all forms of addiction with one single use. Now, I've been there. I have to question what's going on.
Rick, I was reading a copy of the Missouri Conservationist magazine. It was on our kitchen table last night, and it came in the mail, and I was looking at it, and there's this gal who is helping this child fish. Okay, so there's this great big image, and it says protect and conserve. Missouri's conservation agents are out in communities protecting and conserving our fish, forest, and wildlife, and building relationships along the way. So they show this woman who is an officer protecting and conserving, and there she is. The first thing you see is this big, bad gun belt with a huge gun on it, and she's leaning over with helping this young child with a fishing rod. And then every picture that you see within the magazine that is about this article, you see these guys with guns. And so they're saying, hey, we're building relationships. Is that the way to start? Is that the way to start with these young people, to have these huge hand cannons and let them think that, this is normal. This is normal, and we're going to go fish today. But if anything goes wrong, we're going to kill some people. And you mentioned the military, and what came to my mind is a discussion I had with an instructor last night off the air on the telephone about the military and how the military is in the destruction business. They go and blow things up. They destroy things that are in their path. They go out of their way to blow things up. They go out of their way to develop chemical weapons, biological weapons, neutron weapons, atomic weapons, hydrogen weapons, explosives of all kinds. And, there are doctors who are pulling fragments out of people while the military is putting fragments in people. This is nuts. And I'm angry about it, Rick. I'm angry about these recruitment officers who go out to high schools and they pick on the prey. They prey on these young people, and they go in their uniforms and they look all fancy and they say, you can travel the world and, you can get a great education, but they don't tell them that they're going to put a target on the back of their head. And they may come back maimed, wounded, and damaged for life. And class, if you haven't seen someone who has been shell-shocked, you need to do that, because it will absolutely, positively prevent you from letting your children sign up with these merchants of death, these recruitment officers. They're despicable people. Absolutely despicable, lying their way into your children's hearts, telling them that they're gonna be heroes, and they're gonna wear medals, and they can wear these same uniforms, and they can rain destruction all over the planet. It's nuts. I think these recruitment officers are an enemy of the village. And parents, what are you thinking? What are you thinking when you let your children enter the military service, if you want to call it that, where they go and get sent on orders to beat up little countries all over the world and steal their resources and destroy their infrastructure in the name of spreading democracy? That's what they say. We're going to keep the world safe for democracy. But in the meantime, we're going to have to destroy their water systems, their electrical systems, their roads, their factories, and their hospitals and schools. And if you wonder why people hate us all over the world, it's because that's what we do. We need to get all of these selected, alleged representatives out of their positions. Every single one of them needs to go, because the ones who may be good haven't stopped the evil. They all need to go.
Well, right now, BLM, Bureau of Land Management, is giving away our forests to China in Oregon State. And the Burns, Oregon event was the Clinton Foundation giving a Class 1 uranium mine to Russia. And they had to have a body count so that it was okay and hidden within the disinformation of what was really going on there to be distinguished differently than the Bundy Ranch event. I don't think people are understanding that things like Oath Keepers and the rest of these militias have all been infiltrated. And there is no one you can trust unless you've known them more than 10 years. And that's one of the reasons why I like to live in the country.
Our little meetup group, at one time we had, as many as, I'd say over 300 people would attend when we had events, like the expos. We had standing room only. We literally had over 300 people in a restaurant that would hold 160. We were infiltrated. We were infiltrated over the years. And these guys, I'm talking about these agents of governments would come into the meetup, and they would sit there and they would turn their smartphones aimed so that they could record. And when I saw them come in, it's easy to spot these guys. It really is. And I'd go over and introduce myself, say I'm so glad they're there. And I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to help you make some new friends. And I would ask some of the ladies who were regulars to sit with these guys, and pretty soon, within a couple minutes, the spies would leave. They couldn't take it. They couldn't take it because we knew who they were. We'll be right back. Rick, I want to share an article that I read last night on themirror.co.uk, and the headline says, British chef went temporarily deaf after eating the world's hottest noodles. So this man who's 22 years old from London, he ate a dish with 100 bird's eye chilies crushed together, giving the dish a Scoville rating of 20 million. So he ate the world's hottest noodles 4,000 times stronger than Tabasco sauce, and he went deaf 2 minutes after eating this dish. Now, temporarily, he went deaf. And so this was in a backstreet restaurant where he ate it, and he started sweating profusely, became dizzy, had to soak his head in water, and went deaf after a couple minutes. The point is, I think some young people want to show how macho and how manly they are, and they may do some things that are not prudent, including contests to drink alcohol, chug down a large volume of alcohol, and they may die from it. They may do things like in a fraternity initiation, they may lie down in a hand-dug grave in a beach, and then the sand collapses and they get buried alive, not unintentionally. But people do things when they feel peer pressure, and it's stupidity at its finest. And I just would like to caution those who might even try to eat red hot peppers when they know that it's going to give them a reaction. Why chance it? Why chance it? Your thoughts, Rick?
Well, this is typical of how high school kids are assaulted by fraternal orders going to college. And most of them, like the Republican Party, don't know goat turds from pork and beans. The actual use of children in pedophile groups for ritual uses, for high-end effects in magic, is absolutely wrong. Most churches don't realize that they use ritual situations where the elders circle the flock in a church. That's a metaphor in terms of how the rituals have proliferated down into today's modern forms of moose, elk, and the rest of it. And originally, magical orders were for the ultra-elite of Europe seeking higher levels of consciousness. All your top-end writers, poets, things like that belonged to such orders as Golden Dawn, seeking spirituality. That was how you did it if you didn't do it in a church or go to India. In fact, many of the lodges, like Theosophical Society and the Rosicrucians, tried to integrate the East with the West, looking for common ground in the ritual structures and formats. In Jungian psychotherapy, they call it the difference between the sacred and the profane. And I have to tell you that when I came out of graduate school, I had to, like a high school kid, armor up because these lodges came at me. When I was at Harvard, there was Skull and Bones right in my face wanting me to participate. I'm not even going to mention such things as Bohemian Grove and the rest of it because they're all there. And every single bureaucracy, including BLM, has a secret magical cult within it. It isn't the military that's the problem or the government. It's these secret little cells within it that have no accountability and go over the edge with their ritual constructs that they actually don't even understand. Now,
but let's talk more about let's talk more about these magical cults when we come back on the other side of the break. How about that? Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Doc Rams with us. Rick, we were talking about secret societies and magical cults, and I just wanted to bring something up. I remember watching a video of George W. Bush being interviewed, and the interviewer said something like, you're a member of a secret society, right? And he said, yes. And so the interviewer said, so what do you, Skull and Bones, what do you guys do in this secret society? And then Bush said, well, it wouldn't be a secret if I told you. So what do you think they do in these secret societies, Rick?
Well, let's see. The Greeks used paddle boards and balloons. So, and alcohol, chug. Remember John Belushi when he did the movie Animal House and the toga parties? And the John Belushi as the guy that later in the movie drives off to Washington, D.C. with the big blonde with all the big chest on it. And that was his representation of George W. Bush, where he pushes a beer can against his forehead and toga. Yeah, that's what they do. And they think that they are creating magic, like having sex with children is like voodoo, where blood is spurted everywhere and everybody's emotions get so outraged as to create a schism in space-time. And good luck with that.
Rick, I was involved in a fraternity at the university. I actually was the president of a chapter of the fraternity at a university. And I was selected to be initiated at the National Conclave. And this was in front of 4,000 people. And there were only a couple of us, literally just a couple, on stage. And the grand guy, I won't use the name of the office, but we'll call it the president, the grand president of the entire worldwide fraternity, was the one who was initiating me, and he was in, full regalia. He was in robes, and but I got to tell you that there was nothing that happened that I would consider part of the occult, that I recognized as a cult. There was nothing that happened that involved sex or little children. In this, in this, at least in my experience, with any part whatsoever of this international collegiate fraternity. However, my only experience is with this one fraternity, and it's very large. At the time, it was as large, pretty much as large as they get. Elvis Presley was a member. President Ronald Reagan was a member. Conrad Hilton was a member.
Yeah, that's called like JC's, Junior Chamber of Commerce, those kinds of step-ups. It's all there. It's called the Mass of the Holy Ghost, and sacred, and is different and started in India with Tantric Yoga. And Aleister Crowley, others have written about it through the ages, starting with Golden Dawn and then OTO, other magic lodges that would use what we call high magic. High magic is following or trying to discover your purpose. The distinction between intent, what you end up doing and what you did not really do that you should have, that kind of thing, and the purpose for why you're actually physically in force space. And it's an awakening kind of thing that all of us internally seek. And religions have basically been formed to assert fellowship. The idea of finding somebody that has a similar common belief and or value structure that will help you reinforce your own. I love churches for going and playing baseball. The fellowship that I have playing baseball with a church group is exhilarating. On the other end, spirituality is not what you do, but how you do it. And that's where the constructs of hypocrite comes to mind and bearing false witness. Now, I have tried and make mistakes all the time. That's why I'm physically here. It's like I'm making mistakes. I'm here to learn and try to become better. And the idea is none of us are clean. And how dare one person make judgment on another? And then when there's somebody in Washington, D.C. that thinks he's doing something to protect me and or do something that I don't know to do, and he's going to do it for me, that's not right. And that's where Hobbes and Kant started the philosophy and distinction between natural and civil law. And what we have today is so constraining as to, there's no way out in this system. And that's one of the reasons why many of your listeners want to retreat to their own little sustainable lifeboat, close down and be isolationists in some ways. I do not believe in the constructs of war. And right now, Africa is riddled with crime and civil rights because of greed and money from high-end one-percenters wanting the molybdenum. Now, I've had enough, and I'm going to say so publicly. Whether or not people get what I'm saying, that's a different matter. But it's all wrong. It's corrupt, and is why they say that Satan is alive and well on the planet Earth. Really, demons are actually those elements or qualities in human behavior that are deemed unworthy. And that's what a real demon is. It's lesser than you are. It's a behavior pattern and or whatever, a tendency like greed, jealousy, lust, that we all have and need monitoring to try to make cleaner and become more pure.
Yeah, what's wrong with helping each other? One of the things I wanted to tell you, Rick, and I mentioned this before. That's the
philosophy. That's what Christ had to say. And actually, my girlfriend reminded me that at one time, Christ threw a tantrum because he said, and I can't quote it exactly, but she was good at it, because that's the only way of communication that they understand. Now, I don't, and I find myself throwing tantrums or getting angry and raising my voice, and it's wrong. And when I do this, I have gotten to the point where I am no longer witnessing myself. Witnessing is when you watch yourself behave a certain way, like you have a detached part of self that's watching your behavior. And right now, what I would like to do or aspire toward is the teachings of Christ. Not become like Christ, but his teaching. And that's not Christian. That's a seen philosophy. And it goes way back before the Catholic Church ever did, or Christianity or any of that existed. And so that is what I aspire toward. Older values that were practiced by people I respect in history.
I agree. Mike in Maryland, you're on with Doc Ram. Welcome. Mike, you're on the air.
Just chime in a little bit on secret societies.
Yeah.
There's this movie that came out in 1970, and this is when I was like 18 years old, and it was a pretty good movie. It was called Brotherhood of the Veil. It's a made-for-TV movie. And
I remember that one.
It starred Glenn Ford, and it was about this one guy that joined the secrets of Glenn Ford, who joins the society as a young man in college. And I don't want to, do any spoilers here, but basically, to explain a little bit, he had wealth, a good-looking wife, great job, everything he could ever want. And then one day, the society asked him to do something that was against that he thought was wrong. And then his whole life went to HE double hockey sticks after that, when he refused this order from the secret society. Really good movie, Brotherhood of the Veil. You can see it free on YouTube. Now, the last time I saw it was a couple years ago. It was like on 10-minute installments. But it's well worth seeing, and it kind of like, and I just thought it was straight up fiction. I had no idea in my naive little mind that societies like that could exist. But it's a really good movie, well acted, well done, especially considering the fact that it was a made-for-TV movie. But Glenn Ford did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
Mike,
that's a good reference. Thanks for that. I think people need to realize there's something more going on here, and that we're all of us being duped into behaviors and actions that we don't believe in. And
Mike,
the answer to that is
can you
not
tell us the
outside
name?
in the Word. The answer is inside and your personal response to the Word. And that is where real truth lies. It's not outside, it's inside. And it's not in somebody else's written, whether they were inspired by God. It is the inspiration that you feel when you read something. That's where the real truth lies. That, by the way, is part of my writings in the Non-Local Mind book, and how your future timeline is helping you construct a path toward your purpose. And when you do that, something miraculously happens, and you become enlightened.
Mike, one more time, the name of that movie?
It's called Brotherhood of the Veil.
Of the Ville, Ville?
V-I-E-L, or V-I-A-L, or the Veil. Veil.
Of the Veil,
like the thing
okay.
that covers something.
Got it. Great. Mike, thanks so much for calling. Rick and I will be right back. Rick Miller's with us. Rick, I believe people are changing, and not necessarily for the better. And I mentioned this story, and I'll use it as a lead into the another part of the story that I'd like to share, connecting some dots. So our son and I were in Kentucky, and we had a brake failure pulling a 26-foot gooseneck trailer with our Dodge Cummins turbo diesel 1999 pickup truck. So that we had a brake failure on one of the axles. One of the brake shoes came loose off the backing, and in lots of water. There's a lot of rain, and something happened to the brakes. And it's not like we don't check them; we do. And so we had this mechanical failure, and so we pulled to one of those rest stops. And this is where tractor trailers would pull in and cars would pull in to use the bathroom there. Anyway, we decided to take the tires and wheels off one of the axles, both sides, left and right, and bring this trailer home unloaded on just one axle rather than two axles. And everything was safe doing that. And so it took us about an hour to change to take the wheels off and tires. Nobody came over to say, how's it going, or what are you doing? Nobody even engaged us in conversation. And it was during daylight hours, and I was very surprised that no one was interested in helping us. No one was interested in talking to us. No one was interested in any way, shape, or form engaging us. Now that that leads me into the next story. And so last night, as it was getting dark, I was chatting with Mrs. Finelli, and we moved over 100 cows from one side of the road to another. And what we typically do is we live on a dirt road, and there's very little traffic on this road. The road grader came by and messed up the road, as it always does, and it was drizzling and on and off. So we were opening one fence to move the cows to the other side of the road. And what we do to do it quickly is I call the cows, or our son calls the cows, and they all bunch up, and then they get ready to cross the road. They know what they're doing, so we just call them, and they go, okay, we're going to the other side of the road where there's fresh grass. This is good. And as we were preparing to do this, one of our neighbors came by, and my wife was talking to him in his truck, and she said, there's something in the road down there, so be careful because you may hit it, and it's not obvious from where we are right now whether it's a rock that the road grader left in, a large rock like bowling ball size, or whether it's something else. And he said, yeah, I passed that, and I saw it before. Now here's the point. So I said to my wife, I don't understand. Because if we saw that and we were down there at that time, we would have stopped, gotten out of our truck, and moved whatever it is out of the way so no one would run into it, no one would have an accident, no one would be hurt, and no vehicle would be damaged by it. And I said, but I don't know where that came from. I don't know if that came from my mom and my dad. I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know if it came from your mom and your dad. But I know that every single member of our family would have stopped, gotten out of the vehicle, moved that object out of the way, into the ditch, wherever, so that no one would be hurt by it. But that's us. And I don't think that everybody's like that. But I think people were more like that in the past. Rick, are you seeing the same kind of me first, I don't care about anybody else attitude in your neck of the woods?
I'm seeing values that don't mix is what I'm saying. For example, I live in Oregon. Most people that live in Oregon do not have a bunch of money, and their value systems are such they want to live in the country and see more green. California is different in that their values are status and what they're driving, whether it's a Beamer, an Audi, or whatever, a BMW or a Mercedes. Up here, now when people from California move up here because the land is cheaper, now we have the mixing of oil with water. And with that comes the tension of these values in conflict. Who's right? Well, I choose not to make value on Los Angeles. I wouldn't want to live there. How did Crocodile Dundee put it when he's out in the woods in survival eating alligators? Well, you can live on it, but I wouldn't eat it. Well, that's it. That's why we have choice. And I choose to live a different kind of life. Now, with that...
We'll be right back. Plus, I'd like to give out a couple listen line numbers if you're traveling and like to take USA Prepares with us. 605-477-3249. 605-477-3249. And here's another one. 605-562-5111. 605-562-5111. And then option number 4. Rick Miller's with us. Rick, you were talking about L.A., and you'd like to live in another kind of world.
Well, it's a different universe with different values. And I'm not going to say that mine are superior or inferior to others. What I'm saying is they're different. And that's probably why the United States is shortly going to fragment into about 9 provinces where groups of states have issues against the federal government, and they're trying to regulate everything. And the more we're regulating, the more complex we're getting, the more corrupt the entire system becomes. And what it really is about is not the government or the military. It's these secret little cult sects within each that have no accountability.
Rick, yeah, and
there's nothing wrong with the military or our government.
Yeah.
It is the individuals and their agendas within it. When I was at the Pentagon, I literally witnessed different floors trading bullets. I mean, there's conflict going on within all of these, including our government. Look at the Democratic and Republican parties. This is craziness. And what we are missing is the practical of where are our statesmen when we need them the most. That's what
we don't have any statesmen.
A statesman.
We don't have any statesmen. We have a bunch of perverts. Rick,
that's
I was thinking.
Word. Pervert is a good word to associate with Hillary Clinton. She probably is so sick, and yet there is no accountability for her health right now. Why is that? Because it would put the Democratic Party at a close down. We don't have a candidate suitable, and then there is going to be a problem with our elections, just like they are predicting. And Trump has already shown to be not so much interested in his so-called principles, but is breaking and bending them for the vote. Now there it is. Read it and weep.
How about the post yesterday that said if one of the candidates were to die, and I don't know if this is a veiled threat, I don't know if it's an open threat, but the post said that if one of the candidates were to die, the Electoral College may pick our president or not. So now we know that really, how much does our vote count if the Electoral College will just pick one? And I think that's where we are. We're coming to the realization, Rick, that we really have very little influence as villagers in what happens.
We're not even being given a choice. And Hillary Clinton is sick. She probably is not going to make it to the elections. There is absolutely no question there's something wrong. We've seen the syringes. We've seen her behavior in public where she goes into seizure. So what's going on? And
how about the restroom?
Look at Trump and the way he is changing his policies to amend and back off. He's already violated constitutional rights in many of his statements of position. He's a bigot. And he's not even smart like I am. And yet he would think he is because he has more money. Values again. Here we are at the end of days.
Rick, there are posts.
When
there are posts, Rick, on the internet asking the questions. Is that an image of Hillary with a pantsuit on, and is that a catheter tube running down across her knee? Is that what that, long
Yes,
strip?
it is. And actually, there's been reports of that, and she probably has a problem with right now with Parkinson's. But here's the deal. We don't know. There are many, many questions, and why are they not being addressed? Because who cares?
How about those glasses? Do you remember seeing, it might have been about a year ago, images of her wearing these new prescription glasses that were Fresnel lenses? What I'm saying, a Fresnel lens, class, you've seen these parabolic antennas that are aimed at satellites, these, 10 and 12 foot antennas and much larger. You know what a parabolic antenna is. Well, she had these lenses that were Fresnel lenses, which do the same thing as a parabolic lens, except it's more flat. So it's a bunch of slices of a parabolic lens. Have you seen that image of Hillary with those lenses, Rick? These are like Coke bottles.
I've seen a bunch of stuff. My Facebook page every day has uploads of the atrocities and outrageousness of what's going on at docram.com. And I am now getting over 40,000 views a week. 40,000. And I know that I don't know. And if I don't know, what does that suggest about our media and my ability to research and get to the bottom of something? I know that I don't know. I now realize I may never know what really happened regarding geoengineering, whatever. You know, geoengineering, Carnegie Mellon came out. This is Pittsburgh. This is the group that came in and physically wiped my hard drives. I've got evidence and proof on this. He tried to discredit me. Look what they've done to Zen Gardner, whom I think is a far better writer than me. I mean, articulating the values and of which I aspire toward. And he's gone. He's out. He's finished. They discredited him this last week, big time. And Carnegie Mellon came out with 76 scientists out of 77, so-called peer review. Not my peer, but peer review saying that geoengineering was a pseudoscience, and all of that fluff up there from 3 and 5 hours is water vapor. Right.
Right.
That's crazy. And whom do they think they're kidding? And why are not more people saying this is outrageously wrong? And we're to take some of these universities like Carnegie Mellon to task. This is wrong.
Rick,
and they know it.
I know with all of my fabric that that this chemical spraying is absolutely positively real. I mean, I have been taken down.
I mean, 2 weeks ago on our show, you actually said, what about the aluminum volume presence in the soil and in the atmosphere? Where did that come from? You know, and Carnegie Mellon and their scientists, peers, are saying it's pseudoscience. Right. I published each of their names for history. I want everybody to realize they're liars. And they're doing it for profit or money or something that and needs accountability.
Rick, I know you're upset. Whatever you do, whatever you do, don't say it.
It's changing me, and I don't like it. I don't want to be like this.
It's changing a lot of us because, Rick, we would hear the words back in the 1960s, "America, love it or leave it," and now a bunch of us are saying, "So where can we go?" We're annoyed. We're annoyed that a few of the elite in Washington and in our state capitals are pushing us around and telling us what to do. I was thinking about if I do another seminar, and I don't know if I will be or not, but I was thinking about the topics. I teach people how to save money and how to pay less in taxes, and I get annoyed having to pay taxes. So when I buy something for the farm, if it is directly related to the farm, I don't pay sales tax. I don't have to pay sales tax because it's a farm-related item. Well, I think a lot of us should start having farms so you can buy things that are for your farm and not pay sales tax. And how much is sales tax? It's getting darn close to 10% now, Rick. It's over 8% in some hamlets in Missouri. Over 8% sales tax. That's absolutely nuts.
Yeah, they try to levy your property taxes for the crime. And then they do the excuse of, we have poor law enforcement because we don't have the budgets we need. And it turns out our budgets are higher than what they're paying in other regions who have no problems. Because
here's the thing.
It's the orientation of the law enforcement in that region that determines whether it's a business or they're actually there to serve and protect. whatever happened to Smokey the Bear? And it isn't Smokey Bear. There's another timeline. It was Smokey the Bear. And I remember that, and I won't forget it. And whatever happened to that concept?
You're right. Rick, it was only you can prevent forest fires. Smokey the Bear. And then I remember it became Smokey Bear. And then I remember commercials on television saying, it's not Smokey the Bear. Here's the proof. Is it Easter the Bunny? No, it's not Easter the Bunny. It's Easter Bunny. So it was Smokey Bear. Those guys lied to us.
Have used that bear as their logo for letting others know when children are for sale. It started with Grateful Dead. I love the Grateful Dead and their blue bear, but if you see that blue bear face, that is children for sale. Make a note.
We'll be right back. Class, I'd like to apologize to some of the callers who have called in the last segment of this broadcast. It's only a few minutes long, and I've got some things that I posted on our Facebook page of what we're going to talk about with Doc Ram today. So I was unable to take those calls. So if you're going to call us early. Call us early in the broadcast, and that way we'll have more time. Rick, I was thinking, I flew over Phoenix many years ago, and I was thinking, boy, Phoenix is huge, Phoenix, Arizona. So I looked up how many people live in Phoenix, 1.5 million. It's the number 6 in terms of population city in the United States, and they're known for sun and warm temperatures. And anyway, if you look at the metropolitan area, about 4,300,000 people live in the Phoenix metro area. And so I thought, where does all this stuff go? Where does it come from? And I thought, okay, so let's say a person takes a shower or a bath a day and uses 1 ounce of shampoo or a half an ounce of shampoo and a half an ounce of shampoo and a half an ounce of conditioner. That's 268,000 bottles of shampoo per day in just Phoenix. Where does it come from? Are we going to run out? And where do we put all those empty bottles? And that doesn't include the cans of food, the trays that the meat's packaged in, the bags that you get your purchases from Walmart in, the boxes and containers that other items come in, these overpackaged. Rick, I'm really concerned about what we're doing to the planet, where we're overpackaging, it's nuts.
Yeah. And you'll notice that all of your garbage disposal is handled by the Italian mafia. Yeah,
and so I'm really concerned, and we've gotten our trash down to once a week. But what would happen if trash pickup and moving to another site and then burying it, for future generations to dig up and to pollute the water supply? What would happen if trash service stopped across the country for like a month? We'd have rats
on
and
my
mice.
Property, I keep discovering old dump sites from the 1930s and the 1940s on my piece of property.
Yeah, not much plastic in there. You find glass and maybe some.
That's DuPont. Yep. There it is. Yep.
Right.
Overpackaging and containers that are so difficult sometimes to open them, you actually break the product inside them trying to open them.
Mm-hmm. Rick, there's another post. There's another post I was reading about. This is good news. Protesters in Argentina force Monsanto to destroy a GMO seed manufacturing plant. There was a success of we, the villagers, coming down on the big, bad corporate thugs. So that's great news that happened. And we need to do that around our villages. And where we see corruption, we need to surround them with protest and point these guys out. Rick, what's gravity? Do we know what gravity is? We know what it does, but do we know what it is?
We have different theories of what it is and what it is not. I like the old graffiti on the bathroom wall that says there is no such thing as gravity. The earth sucks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Gravity is a fallout of a force having to do with space and time, and if space and or time is curved like a black hole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think about the grid down situation? Is that like one of your worst fears? It's one of your worst concerns. That's one of mine.
Grid down is an inevitability that is going to happen, whether done naturally or by by an act of terrorism, more likely. We're overdue, and when it happens, what are you going to do when you have to go to the toilet and you're 16 floors up in New York City? How's that work? And that's
I wouldn't want to be
what
down
the main concerns are of what creates what we will call a zombie. You know, when they can't get their water, what happens next?
Yeah, and you certainly don't want to be downhill. You don't want to be in the low area when the pumping stations at the sewage treatment plant fail, because it's going to end up in your house, coming up through your toilet. Rick, thanks so much for being with us. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you.